You know, we've all heard it a million times, right? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. It's practically the first piece of health advice anyone ever learns. But what if the real secret to the apple's power isn't just in the apple itself? What if it's all about an incredible partnership with trillions of tiny helpers that are already living inside you? Okay, let's get into it. So today, we're putting that old saying under the microscope, and we're focusing specifically on heart health. Is this whole thing just a comforting old wives' tale? Or is there some real hard science that shows this super simple fruit can actually make a difference for our hearts? Let's follow the clues.
To start our investigation, we've got to do what any good detective would do. We need to look inside the apple. What's it actually made of? What are the active ingredients, the secret weapons in its arsenal that could be responsible for all these health claims?
Now, at first glance, it looks pretty straightforward. An apple is mostly water, more than 85%. Then you've got a decent chunk of carbs. But the real magic, the stuff that has scientists so excited, is hiding in that tiny little 0.6% slice. That's where we find the good stuff. And when we zoom in on that tiny fraction, our investigation really narrows down to two prime suspects. First, a very special kind of dietary fiber called pectin. And second, a powerful group of plant compounds known as polyphenols. These are the two bioactives we're going to be tracking through this whole story. So, first up is pectin. Pectin is a soluble fiber. What does that mean? It means when it hits water, it dissolves and forms this thick, kind of gel-like substance. Now I know that might not sound super exciting, but that gelling ability, it is a critical clue that becomes incredibly important later on. So just remember that. Pectin makes a gel. Our second suspect, polyphenols. Now this is a huge family of compounds that plants make to protect themselves. And when we eat them, they can act as powerful antioxidants for us. Think of them as a personal security detail for your cells. In apples, we find a few specific types, like flavonols and flavonols, that are especially good at this job. And here is maybe the most crucial, practical piece of evidence in our whole investigation, a tip you can use tonight. Whatever you do, don't peel your apples. The peel is an absolute powerhouse. It is jam-packed with a much higher concentration of these beneficial compounds than the flesh. Seriously, if you're throwing away the peel, you are throwing away the best part.
So we've identified our key compounds in the apple. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast. This is where the plot really thickens, because it turns out our bodies actually need an accomplice to unlock the apple's full potential.
See, here's the big problem. It's called bioavailability. Pectin and a lot of these polyphenols, they're big, complex molecules, and when we eat them, they get down to our small intestine, but our bodies just can't break them down and absorb them as is. It's like trying to fit a giant key into a tiny little lock. It just doesn't work. And we are not talking about a small problem here. A staggering 90%, up to 90% of the polyphenols we eat pass right through the small intestine completely untouched. They arrive in the colon, the large intestine, pretty much in the same state they went in. So, how could they possibly be doing us any good? Well, this is where our accomplices finally enter the scene. Your gut microbiota. Your colon is home to trillions of bacteria. It's like this bustling, microscopic city that acts as an incredibly sophisticated biochemical factory. And what's their main job? To break down all the stuff our own bodies can't handle, including those powerful compounds from apples.
So here's how that whole journey works. You eat the apple. The big polyphenols cavil all the way down to your colon. And that's when your gut bacteria get to work. They basically chop up these large molecules, they transform them into new, smaller compounds called metabolites. And it's those smaller metabolites that our bodies can finally absorb into the bloodstream to go do all their amazing work. It's an incredible bit of teamwork, really.
All right, so we've identified our suspects, pectin and polyphenols, and we've met the crucial accomplices that activate them, our gut bacteria. So now, it is time to connect all the dots and see exactly how this partnership might build a case for better heart health. The benefit you hear about most often is lowering cholesterol. But how does that actually work? How does munching on an apple lead to lower cholesterol numbers? Well, the mechanism is surprisingly clever, and it all circles back to that gel-forming pectin we talked about at the beginning.
So first, we need a super quick biology lesson. I promise it'll be painless. Your liver pulls cholesterol out of your blood to produce something called bile acids. You need these to digest fats. Now, after they've done their job, your body, being super efficient, recycles most of them. It reabsorbs them and sends them back to the liver to be used over and over again.
Okay, this is where pectin makes its big move. Remember that gel it forms? Well, that gooey gel moves through your intestine and it physically traps some of those bile acids. And because they're trapped, they can't be recycled. They just get carried right out of the body as waste. Your liver then notices this shortage and it's like, hey, I need to make more bile acids. And to do that, what does it have to do? It has to pull more cholesterol out of your bloodstream. The end result? Your blood cholesterol levels go down. It's so cool.
But you know what? The case doesn't just end with cholesterol. Those metabolites from the polyphenols, the ones our gut bacteria create, they might also help our blood vessels relax, which is great for blood flow. They can reduce systemic inflammation by keeping our gut wall healthy, and some studies even suggest they might have a small positive effect on blood pressure. So it's really a multi-pronged attack.
Okay, the theory is solid. The biological mechanisms, they make a lot of sense. But what happens when we actually test this in rigorous human trials? What is the final verdict from the scientific community? Does it hold up?
For a really authoritative answer, we're not just going to look at one study here or there. We're going to look at a systematic review. This one's from Food Standards Australia, New Zealand. And what they did was gather up all the best human studies on pectin and cholesterol to see what the entire body of evidence says when you put it all together.
And their final conclusion is, well, it's very carefully worded, as science often is. They say the degree of certainty is only moderate. Now, in science speak, that's really important. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means it's not a 100% slam dunk, case closed fact just yet. The evidence is promising, but not totally definitive.
So why only moderate? Well, it's because when you look at the results from the actual trials, they're not perfectly consistent. Out of the main trials they looked at, a solid 5 of them did find that pectin lowered cholesterol. That's great, but 2 other studies found no significant effect. And whenever you have mixed evidence like this, scientists tend to stay cautiously optimistic instead of declaring victory.
So, after all that, what are the key things to take away from our little investigation? First, your gut bacteria are your essential health partners. They unlock the power of the food you eat. Second, the idea that apples can improve heart health is backed by some really plausible science, and the human evidence is promising, even if it's not totally conclusive yet. And finally, and I'm going to say it one last time, always eat the peel. That's where so much of the power is hiding.
And that brings us all the way back to our big question. Is an apple a day a prescription for heart health? Well, probably not a standalone prescription, no. But the science absolutely shows that it's a powerful, delicious, and evidence-backed piece of a much, much larger puzzle. And understanding that amazing, hidden partnership with our gut makes it all the more fascinating.